Okay, thank you so much for joining us, everybody. I am Rachel Steen. I'm the Director of Communications and Marketing at World Jewish Relief. Tonight, we have with us Paul Anticoni, World Jewish Relief CEO, Stacey Swimer, our Director of International Programs, and Ekaterina Mitiaev, Head of Impact and Livelihoods. And they are live from Dnipro in Ukraine after spending the day in Zaporizhia. While both Paul and Stacey and Ekaterina have been to Ukraine numerous times since the war began in 2022, this is the first time they've been able to travel east in Ukraine and visit our partners in these places. They're going to share their insights and reflections from their trip and conversations they've had with both partners and participants over the last few days. Before I hand over to Paul, a few words on general housekeeping. We're going to try and keep this to 45 minutes because the team have a 17-hour overnight train to catch immediately after this, and that is part of the joy of traveling in Ukraine at the moment, which they will talk to you more about. We'll also make sure there's some time for questions at the end, and thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance. If you do have any questions while you're listening, please use the questions box at the bottom of the screen and we will try to get to you. But if we don't, then we'll try to come back to you on email afterwards. Finally, we're hoping there won't be any issues, but power and Wi-Fi in Ukraine, and particularly in the east, can still be a little bit patchy. So if the feed cuts out for any reason, we will try and get the team back as quickly as possible. Thank you again for joining us. And I'm going to pass over now to Paul to share his thoughts and reflections on his trip so far. So Paul, over to you.
Thank you, Rachel. And good evening, everyone. Lovely. I can't see you all, but I know you're there. I can see there are 95 screens already open. And as always, a very sincere and heartfelt thank you for being interested in what World Jewish Relief does and believes in, and supporting us and helping us do this absolutely critical, life-saving and life-changing work, which the three of us have seen very luckily firsthand this week. A big thank you, I should say, not just to Britain's Jewish community, but to the US community as well, also big supporters of our work and particularly interested in our commitment to the Jewish community of Ukraine here, which we've been spending a lot of time engaged with. It was important, I felt, to come back to Ukraine. I was back here in January, but Ukraine now entering its fourth year of this war since the full-scale Russian invasion. And while it's slightly faded from our news, I'm sure you're all aware that, hostilities continue in the north, in the east, in the southern oblasts of Ukraine. Reminded this week that there remain 3 million Ukrainians living in occupied Russian territory. I mean, the numbers are bamboozling. Another 3.5 million plus displaced, so not living in their home. I mean, that doesn't just mean their house is bombed and they've gone next door. It's mean they've moved across the country. There are, as I'm sure many of you know, 7 million Ukrainian refugees spread all across the world. We might reference some of those and the help that World Jewish Relief is providing in the UK. And we met with the United Nations resident representative on Monday, the most senior UN figure in country. First, impressed with World Jewish Relief's work. We like that. But secondly, also reminding us 12.7 million Ukrainians requiring humanitarian assistance at the moment. Now, those numbers are immense and unbelievable until you see it in the eyes of every person that we've met and the sort of despair and challenge that they face. And I wanted tonight to be a little bit more about what we've seen, but it's difficult to say what we've seen unless you get here. And getting to Ukraine has become harder and harder. I used to moan, I'm sure many of you, I think some of you on the call came with me to Ukraine over the last 20 years of my time at World Jewish Relief on the trips and the missions we used to take, sometimes to Dnipro here or to Zaporizhia. And we used to complain about having to take an early morning flight from Heathrow. You transferred in Vienna, and really within 6 hours, you might be in Dnipropetrovsk or Kharkiv. Nowadays, remember, all the airports are closed in Ukraine. There is no open airspace in Ukraine because of air attacks and missile attacks. So you have to fly to Poland, get a train to the border, a place called Przemyśl. You get on a train to Kiev. It was a 11-hour, 12-hour train. Amazing trains, leave on time, arrive on time, not like the Northern Line. And then from Kiev, it was another 6-hour train journey to Dnipro, and then another hour and a half journey down to Zaporizhia, just a little bit closer to front lines. And as Rachel highlighted, Ekaterina and Stacey have got the absolute pleasure of traveling with me tonight for 17 hours back to the Polish border. Who wouldn't want to join them on this trip? We might put that into the prize draw next year. But the logistics are sobering, difficult for Ukrainians. The whole of Ukraine seems to be on the move, trying to visit family, check on homes, check on houses, find work, come in and out of the country, other than men who cannot travel at all. And it was a reminder of the horrors that Ukraine is facing, that at 9 o'clock every morning, broadcast on the train, there's a minute's silence. People stand up and pay respects to fallen soldiers, and that's a lot of soldiers. The decision to come was a difficult one because, as again, the audience might know, there's been a very significant intensification of drone, missile, and air attacks across Ukraine. Mostly concentrated on the energy infrastructure, but also on civilian infrastructure, particularly slightly east of the Dnieper, where we are at. And we take safety, particularly safety of our staff and our local staff, extremely seriously. But we spent a night with the air sirens going off, 3 of us in and out of the shelters in the hotel. If you can't get to the shelter because 3 o'clock in the morning, it's not so nice to go down 3 floors to the shelter. So you go into your bathroom, making sure that you have 2 strong walls between yourself and the outside. And I think, we were in Dnipro last night. There was a nasty attack on Dnipro. I forget what casualty numbers were, but certainly not good news. And amazingly for Ukrainians, it's, April the 9th, and it's snowing. It's still snowing, which is unusual. But the snow, the sirens, certainly don't make comfortable travel. Back in London, I run a team meeting for all World Jewish Relief staff every Wednesday morning at 10 o'clock. We joined the Jewish Welfare Centre, the Chesed in Zaporizhia, this morning for their team meeting. They came to meet us. And unlike many of my team meetings in London, it started with an air raid siren and everybody checking their phones. Ukrainians have understandably got a bit tired of air raid sirens, and they don't all head for the shelter unless you're in a school or an old people's home that we're supporting. And they sort of feel that, they've stayed safe for 3 and a bit years. The chances are they're going to stay safe for the next period of time. What we've been looking at here in spending time with partners and clients is just trying to understand what might happen as we start to see discussions and negotiations taking place globally, and a realignment of political support and thinking towards this part of the world. And in hearing from both the United Nations and other agencies and our partners, sort of looking at 3 different scenarios of a continuation of hostilities, very much in the sort of same context. A ceasefire, the second option, a ceasefire and a progress towards a much calming environment, or still the third scenario of a significant escalation and intensification of the conflict that puts Ukraine under even more pressure. And really looking at that, not in terms of the political outcomes, but what it means for World Jewish Relief and how we think and plan around utilizing the extremely valuable resources that we have. There's just no doubt that the scale of vulnerability and needs in Ukraine has gone up, and of course, global and public attention and interest and commitment to continue to support that vulnerability is waning, and that's just natural and understandable. And therefore, Stacey and Ekaterina will talk a bit more about the tricky decisions we're having to make in how we prioritize those allocations. But I think, my reflection is very much that while Ukrainians have been listening to the news, they, like many of us, saw and thought that Trump too might lead to a rapid change in the context. I think the reality is settling in that now seems unlikely in the short term, and that the first scenario, a continuation of the conflict in very much the same way we're seeing ongoing attacks to energy and civilian infrastructure, the wearing away of civilian resilience, a war of sort of inches and exhaustion with tiny little incremental, largely advances by the Russians, but nothing demonstrably and militarily successful. And in talking to the UN resident representative, thinking about a scenario of a conflict that just could go on for years and years and years, and that's really frightening. The reality is definitely that there doesn't seem to be any change in the trajectory of the conflict. It's entirely dependent mostly on either the internal military capability of Ukrainians, which is dependent on the external political and military support that they're receiving. And there certainly doesn't seem to be any change in the motivation and drivers for the original cause of the conflict, a Russian geopolitical ambition and a Ukrainian commitment to continuing with its sovereign and territorial integrity. And if anything, talking to a group of Jewish elderly clients, we stood outside in the snow. They were doing some exercises early morning. It was cold outside the Max Grant Center in Zaporizhia. Very proud that World Jewish Relief and Nigel Ross and Lynn Ross helped construct this amazing center with an active elderly Jewish client group coming together. These babushkas were determined to see victory. They wanted to show, me and the team and our supporters in the UK, that if a Jewish elderly Ukrainian client group can be strong and resilient, the rest of the country would be. And they felt that since recent discussions, the famous Oval Office discussion, they felt a greater determination to fight back. And they still talk about victory, however distant that may be. Many Ukrainians have sacrificed an enormous amount. You feel it in every person's eyes that you see. And to give up any of that makes it feel what was it worth, and so there is still a very, very strong determination, and yet, as we know, there is no single vision for peace in any of the parties to the negotiations, and that means any cessation of hostility seems such a long way away. That might be depressing, and there is a hopelessness and a challenge and a great uncertainty, particularly when you see it in snow. It's quite depressing. But I've seen, clients whose homes have been repaired. I'm not celebrating, but they are able to survive in a home that the World Jewish Relief teams have repaired. I've seen our clients back in work, and nothing is more important Ekaterina will talk a bit about getting people back into work. They don't need any of our handouts. They've got cash in their pocket. They're running businesses. They're in employment. We've seen kids back in school when most schools are closed. And finally, I was in the synagogue in Zaporizhia, which has received amazing support from the Dunstan Road synagogue community in Golders Green, and Rabbi Erin Troy, who we had the pleasure meeting, ready to host on First Night Seder, 180 people for Pesach, which is remarkable. He would say that the trauma and challenge has brought a greater level of spirituality or communal gathering than ever before, even though, you know, the Jewish community numbers are down, maybe around the 90, 100,000 mark in Ukraine, still significant. But there really is a sense of community and support. And Rabbi Erin Troy in Zaporizhia, and the chief rabbi of Ukraine, Rabbi Azman, who we also met, amazed that this, you know, modest British Jewish charity is having such an immense impact across the country. Thanks to all of you. So let me pass on to Stacey Swimer. Stacey is in charge of all of World Jewish Relief's international programs. And maybe Stacey telling us a little bit about what we do here and how we make the tough decisions.
Thanks, Paul. So yeah, I thought I'd start by just maybe reminding people about what we do in Ukraine and all of the different programs that we support and partners that we support. And importantly, I just want to kind of kick off with an amazing stat, which is that since the full-scale invasion from 2022, we've supported over 360,000 people in Ukraine across everything, all of our programs. And we do that in various different ways. We're supporting the older Jewish community, as Paul was talking about, visiting today, Jewish older women who have such determination and strength to fight this war out and see it through, but partly because of the support that we're giving. So we are doing various different things to support the older community here. We are repairing their homes from the damage done by the bombs that are hitting their homes. We're repairing them quickly so that they can live in warm, dignified conditions. We're supporting their daily needs with critical, essential home care. And importantly, we're also supporting their active aging. So we are helping people, whether it's to do exercise in the courtyard in the snow, or to have art therapy, or to participate in an online group. We're helping people to stay as active and as young and independent for as long as possible. And I think that was totally evident of our visit today. Another really key area of work that we're doing is supporting people into employment, as Paul mentioned. We've been supporting this programme for nearly 15 years now, I think. Amazingly, in Ukraine at the moment, and Ekaterina will again tell us a bit more about it, but we are managing to see a 55% employment rate from these programmes. So even in times of war, these are absolutely essential programmes to support people into employment or self-employment. And we are seeing success and real impact, how we are supporting people to change their lives and support them in completely new cities to find work and adjust to a completely new life. Importantly, though, we recognise that we can't support people into employment everywhere, and so we are providing humanitarian aid to those living on the front lines, and that is really essential. Even today, over 3 years since the war began, and we are seeing the humanitarian needs, if anything, they're growing. So we are still providing food and non-food items, hygiene items to those that are living on the front lines. And then the final area of work that I wanted to highlight was supporting children and families, and children especially, because children, their education has massively suffered since this war began, and pre that from COVID as well. In Zaporizhia today, we learned that from over 100 schools that were functioning before the war, only 6 are fully operational today. Many of them are providing a hybrid service. So you have 1 week of online education and a week of being in person. I just think what a massive impact that is having on this generation's kids. And so importantly, our programs are supporting their focus on a real focus on their academic achievements, on maths and Ukrainian provision, where they're falling behind. And importantly, also just the opportunity to have the social skills where they completely lacked the opportunity to interact with other kids and teachers for the last few years. So absolutely essential services. And I think over the last couple of days, we have really had the opportunity to see the breadth and depth of our work. We have packed in an agenda. I don't think we could have done any more. And it's just been the most inspiring, incredible trip. And, for me personally, I've not been to Zaporizhia for a number of years now. And what I felt was that the people were just so grateful to have visitors, because they don't get as many visitors. And that sense of connection, of not being forgotten, of just realizing that people in the UK and the US care about them, they're standing with them. And as Paul said, the needs are absolutely growing. No doubt they are complex, huge needs. And the fact that we are standing with them, I think, is incredibly important. Not only that, the impact that we're having, from what I've seen over the last couple of days, is just inspiring. And our partners are the most resilient, motivated group of people to support their communities. And they are not giving up at all. And maybe I think on that note, I wanted to ask you, Ekaterina, you have been traveling to Eastern Ukraine more than me and Paul. And over the last 3 years, you've traveled regularly. You support partners week in, week out. What do you think over the last 3 years? How's that changed? How are partners coping, and how are the programs adapting to the new and changing needs?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I would like to start from thanking everyone on the call. And I have been thinking also, I'm in Ukraine for the last 3 weeks, I think. So I greeted Stacey and Paul in Kiev after that journey that we have made. And I was impressed with actually how fresh and energized they looked. So I had like a little breakfast and some coffee for them with me. So it's quite nice reunion. So I kept thinking how just human our work is. And, I like this quote from, I think it was a Red Cross staff member in Bosnia. And he talked about humanitarian work, and he just said that our job is to bring a measure of humanity, always insufficient, into the situations that should not exist. And I feel it reflects really well what we are doing. And I feel that we can really do that thanks to our supporters, who just place this enormous trust in us. And now, as we know, lots of institutional donors, unfortunately, withdrawing. Today, we heard about the impact of USAID, US government cutting its funding completely, and what it means actually for the programs that they're being closed, and that vulnerable people are just losing services. And our partners again and again emphasized how essential World Jewish Relief support is, because we're just there for them. Of course, we're also facing challenging, and fundraising is not easy, and priorities shift, but this human touch rather than this massive kind of bureaucratic machines is just really, really important, and I'm very grateful for that. So thinking about what is the emotion currently, what it is changing over the last 3 years, and then today this older lady in the yard, we're all referencing that experience because they were just so expressive, this older women. She said the word "не дождутся," and I was kind of thinking, how do we translate that into English? And into English, it will be "over my dead body." It's like you just kind of it's not going to happen. We are not giving up. you're not going to win over whatever you might call it. And it's just, I think it's an emotion of spite in some way. And I also remember reading about it in Bosnian conflict. It was really, really strong, and it was helping people going. So it was like, we're going to leave, you know, like Dafka, like despite everything, we're just going to wait for that victory, whatever it can be. And even whatever happens, it was a battle, it wasn't a massacre. And I keep thinking about it. And of course, it's a difficult third because we all want victory, and it does, as Paul said, looks quite elusive. But anyway, Ukrainians just put a great fight and continue putting a great fight. And it was interesting talking to this UN representative that Paul mentioned. And he also said, like, remember, Ukrainians surprised us a lot, and they keep surprising us. And for me, I think what is always really inspiring, and I have been working here for a while, yeah, they're very entrepreneurial as well. That's also really amazing to see. And that's why I just love our employment work and our self-employment and business support that we are providing. It's just all these ideas that people are having. Like yesterday, for example, this one participant, she's providing wine tasting services to to various clients who just want a nice evening, or maybe they're traveling. And I think I remember we reporting on that experience. It was just like, how on earth do people come with this idea in the midst of war? And she's saying, yeah, people just want to have fun. They want to have a nice experience. And yesterday, it was really interesting because there was some sirens going on. She was not necessarily feeling great, but then she just said, okay, now you can relax, just breathe. So it is just really, really special commitment of people to still have fun, to enjoy themselves, and just remarkable generosity of spirit. Just, you know, might expect people to be stressed, to be angry, to be bitter, to be disappointed, to be like, you know, you're just coming here on this war tourism for a day and a half, and then you go back. None of this we have experienced, none of these emotions, only happiness to see us, gratitude, appreciation. I think on this trip, we probably heard more like thank you than ever before. And they're kind of saying, you know, even before the war, and all these older ladies who remembered Paul from many years ago, and they were saying, yeah, what we started then, and now we're getting all new, younger, older people who are new pensioners who are just joining, and now they're joining us, and this work continues, and this kindness is going on and on and on. So, of course, people are tired. Of course, we heard that some people told us, it is not easy. It's not easy to keep going. It's not easy to get up in the morning. It's not easy to force myself to cook and do that. But they continue. They're very resilient. And I think it's just essential that we feel that we are with them. And they're just saying it's really, really important, because sometimes on the news, we obviously read about politics. And I'm saying just to not worry about that. We are there for you. So we watch your back. We'll do whatever we can.
Thank you so much, Ekaterina, Stacey, and Paul. We've had a few questions come through, so I think we will head over to those now. And I think I will start with you, Ekaterina, because it sort of picks up on something you were just saying. Obviously, there are a lot of needs and a lot of people that need support at the moment in many different guises, whether that's employment related or humanitarian support, as you were mentioning, Stacey. Surely we can't help everyone. So how do we make those decisions?
Yeah, so first of all, we also have our areas where we have expertise that we developed over the years. So, for example, we are not going to provide, let's say, medical assistance because we are not experts in running hospitals and in medical. But, for example, employment and self-employment is really our expertise. And as you know, we only stopped for 1 month in March 2022, and then we resumed it, so we continued. So in terms of whether we can support everyone, probably not, but we're being, us and partners, we're being extremely creative. We're trying to see whether we can use maybe some spaces in kind, who can provide some trainings maybe for free. So we're trying to reach as many as possible quite cheaply, and also we're nimble and agile, I would say. So we just, and that's also how we have been adapting in our partners in the past few years, that it's not about building big buildings, creating infrastructure. We have just few chairs that we can move and create a space, and we're in this space today that can be easily kind of adapted adapted for the trainings. When necessary, we can switch online. When necessary, we can move places. So individual consultations can be provided. We can expand the teams. So we're trying to be very, very cost effective and to obviously reach as many people as possible. Sometimes difficult decisions have to be made, and then obviously we'll look at all kind of criteria, so of vulnerability and of course priorities, members of the community. Then we will also look if it's beyond community, disability status, many children. Like for example, we help evacuate the family from Konstantinovka, which is Donetsk Oblast, with a child who had cancer. You know, she's 8 years old and she has a bone marrow transplantation, and they could not be in the shelter with many people because of her compromised immune system. So yes, we had to invest, I think it was like about £600, which is quite a lot per person for us, but we made this decision because it was just life-saving for the child. And in that case, partners will discuss it with us. So it's not easy. I would say for World Jewish Relief, we probably choose depth over breadth. And that's also something our partners comment quite a lot, especially for children programs, because they're saying for many like big organizations, they just look for these large, impressive numbers that they can maybe put on their reports or websites, like, oh, we supported millions children. So for us, depth is more important, and we prefer to know what is happening with the person. So it's not about a one-off box of assistance. It's really kind of then looking what else they need. So it might start from humanitarian help, then we might go into children's support, then we'll go into employment and other support as well. So I think probably for us, it's more, as I said, it's going into depth and supporting people over longer time. So to make sure they're really back on their feet and they can support themselves.
Thank you very much, Ekaterina. Another question that we've had, Stacey, obviously you mentioned the number of people that we've been able to support in Ukraine over the last 3 and a bit years since the invasion. In which cities does World Jewish Relief have humanitarian hubs, or in which cities how many cities across Ukraine do we support people?
Well, I think unbelievably, we're supporting people in around 380 different locations around Ukraine. So we have partners in all of the main cities, and then they will have networks and be able to reach people beyond those main cities as well. So from west to east, we are supporting people all over the country. I just actually wanted to add a little bit to the story that Ekaterina just mentioned in terms of supporting the family move from the east, because I think for me over the last few days, that's probably been one of the most impactful visits. You know, this family live on the front line, and they had a forced evacuation notice given to them I think about 5 or 6 months ago, and they only moved last month because they were basically choosing between living on the front line and being under fire, or protecting their child's health. And they were so conscious of not wanting to move to a shelter, communal shelter. And I think that must have been like the toughest decision to make. The girl, who was absolutely gorgeous, was the last person in her class to still be living at home. And I think the fact that our partner has helped them in this way, not only to settle into a different city, to find accommodation for them, they had a really positive energy. And as Ekaterina said, one thing leads to another. The mum is now going to join the Back to Work programme and hopefully find work so that she can support the family in living in a completely new city. And I thought that was just a really great example of the kind of support and level of depth that we were.
I mean, it's interesting. You know, Katerina and Stacey have to make some very, very tough decisions when everything is a priority. And we know if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. You know, our partner, Elena, here talking about providing older incontinent people with sanitary pads. We met a wonderful group of older Jewish clients getting some art therapy today. And I said to them, this seems like a bit of a luxury doing art therapy. And they shouted back at me. And they said, it's the one respite we get from loneliness and missile attacks and air raid sirens and anxiety. We spend, you know, £400 to get somebody into work. That's a lot of money for one family, but it means we don't have to help them again. And having to make those choices, do we provide somebody with incontinence pads? Do we help keep fear and anxiety and trauma at bay for an older client? Or do we get somebody into work? We got to do all three, really. We shouldn't be making those choices and trying at the moment to do slightly more with less, but still at the depth and the quality that Ekaterina talked about is absolutely critical. But it's traumatic. And of course, our partners here giving, I mean, mostly Ekaterina and Stacey, I would say, a hard time on we need more. You've got to help us more. And when other agencies, USAID cuts its funding, much of their funding was going into home repairs. There's only one other agency in town repairing people's homes. I mean, we're really only repairing the homes of Jewish clients. So we can't repair everybody's, but it puts added pressure on the local partner when you're the only good outfit in town.
I just would like also to...
Ekaterina, sorry, we're getting quite a lot of questions through, so I'm just gonna, we will come back to some of this, I'm sure, but I'm conscious of your time. So basically, you just mentioned, Paul, that we're mainly repairing the homes of Jewish clients, but does World Jewish Relief only work with Jewish people in Ukraine, or is it supporting beyond the Jewish community?
I think the last figure was we're supporting about 10,000 Jews across Ukraine. I mean, that's 10% of the population. I mean, more, I think. That's an enormous number, very, very significant. And again, remember, we don't just give everybody a grain of rice and say we're helping everyone. Every intervention needs to have an impact. That's why I've got a head of impact here, Ekaterina, because if it's not making a difference, there's no point us doing it. So it's the depth and is very significant. And we're lucky that we're able to support that array of older person support, employment support, children support, family support to Jewish clients through the generosity of many of our supporters. We're also lucky that we're able to access funding from outside the Jewish community, from non-Jewish sources, which welcome the quality and expertise that Stacey and Ekaterina's teams and our partners bring, provided that we can also provide that support within and beyond the Jewish community. So the UBS Bank Foundation helping us fund our children's project, our Back to Work program, and all through predominantly our Jewish partners and it was wonderful. Again, Rabbi Ehrentreu today saying, you know, he's got a bomb shelter. He's the only in the neighborhood in Zaporizhia. He's got his own generator. So when everybody else has got a blackout, his synagogue is glowing. And anybody can come into the synagogue and charge their mobile phone or keep warm. And I thought that was a wonderful thing for, you know, the most visible, capable, prominent Jewish individual, Jewish leader here to be showing, and it made me very proud to be Jewish and to be part of a Jewish organization.
Thank you, Paul. A bit about recovery now, and do you think that recovery can begin in a war like this where still fighting is ongoing?
Well, as I have mentioned, we haven't stopped recovery only for 1 month. In March 2022, we stopped recovery work because it was just so much uncertainty. And since then, we have resumed our employment program, first in the West, then in the South, then in the East, and we continue. So, you know, for example, Kharkiv is 17 kilometers away from the front line, and we have got our children programs there. We have got our employment. We have some really impressive businesses running there. So I think it didn't stop in a way. We have never stopped the recovery work. So in that sense, it's just going on. So the question is, like, even in the place like Kherson, which is under constant attack, we have restarted our employment, our self-employment program, because women there still want to look beautiful, and there's still some need for beauty kind of services there. So, and also we have children program there, which is unfortunately only online, but it's still really supporting their education. So So I think for us, it's only like really close to the border where we're still providing humanitarian assistance, but everywhere else, we're already doing recovery.
And maybe just to add, I think, because it's, you know, as Paul mentioned, the funding levels in Ukraine have dropped. So that means that the access to humanitarian aid has also reduced. So people's resources are completely depleted, and they, you know, they have to find work. And it is so important to not only help them find work for income generation, but also for their dignity, for their self-confidence, for their you know, ability to integrate into a new community. It is far more than just finding employment, I think. And importantly, also, we have to support the local economy as well. And by solely focusing on humanitarian aid, I think that would not be good for either individuals or the country as a whole.
Thank you, Stacey. We've got 5 minutes left, but we'll do one more question. And the questions come through is about the programme that World Jewish Relief is working on to bring children who have been abducted back into Ukraine. And I wonder if you could just give a very, very brief overview of that programme and what we're doing to help them, and just in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so this is cooperation with the government Children Coordination Center. So we are not necessarily bringing the children. It's a very complex process that other parties and other countries often are involved in that. But we are supporting these government initiatives when the children are already brought into Ukraine to provide for their essential needs, including it can be, and that's decided by the Multidisciplinary Commission. And based on what is decided, we might be providing support with some material support, maybe with some rent for the family, can be psychological assistance, education, laptops. Also, I think we provided assistance for some of the parents who actually were reunited with children. We have this one case where a mother was actually prisoner of war in Russia because she was in the military, and then the child stayed in the occupied territory and was returned, and they're reunited, and we have been supporting both of them. So it's relatively, unfortunately, it's relatively small scale because it's a real challenge to bring these children back, but we are there together with our partners doing what we can for these children and their families.
Thank you. And then finally, I was just going to say, sorry, we're having a lot of questions come through about what people can do and how people can help, and is there anything that people can do to support people on the ground? So just as a final point, Paul, I wonder if there's anything that you wanted to add to that before we close off.
Well, the first is that what all our community has done is support us to make this impact already. You know, if it wasn't for World Jewish Relief and then the Dunstan Road community, the one of the 6 schools in Zaporizhia whose bomb shelter we helped build wouldn't be able to open. If we weren't repairing the hundreds of homes that we've repaired with your help, there'd be many, many more Jewish families displaced and requiring assistance. So, I mean, the impact is absolutely remarkable. Of course, there's much more we need to do. I'd welcome always your support, particularly at Pesach. We've got a very active Pesach appeal ongoing at the moment, and anybody can go to the website and see the details, and we'd welcome a gift. I mean, we're only able to focus our attention really on those living in government-controlled areas, a bit because of security and access, a bit because of sanctions and the difficulties of doing that, and that, of course, is worrying because for World Jewish Relief and many other humanitarian agencies, the suffering and vulnerability of those in occupied areas is very, very severe, and it's just one of many reasons why this horrific conflict just needs to come to an end, so that we can start to reach more individuals.
Thank you very much then. Before we sign off, is there anything further that Stacey, Paul, Ekaterina that you want to add before we let you go catch your train?
The first bit is, I know Stacey's parents are watching. I'm looking after Stacey. Well, We're not taking any risks.
Hi, Mum and Dad.
But I tell you what, traveling when you've got little kids at home and them waving them off, Stacey, I know, very, very hard and emotional. I'm very grateful for my team here. We can't do it without a fantastic team back in the office and a set of trustees that look after us and ensure that we're not taking any undue risks. We cannot do it. World Jewish Relief, as you know, we can't do any of our work without our local partner organizations. They are our eyes, ears, hands, heart, but also we need to keep a check on them because each of them has to go through a process of due diligence. We want to check that their counting, legal, safeguarding, technical standards are up to it. And so Stacey and Ekaterina put them through a sort of a spot check, are quite rigorous. Even though we know them well, it's important we do that because we are the guardians of your money. And sometimes you might get too complacent, and we can never be complacent in a part of the world where the risks are high. We don't channel any of our money through government, through agencies we don't know. I think pretty much every local partner we work with here, we've been working with for many years and we know them well. And, you know, on behalf of all of them and the clients that we've seen and heard today, we're very, very sincere. Thank you and Hag Sameach to all our supporters. We wish you a wonderful Pesach. I wish and hope that we catch our train in an hour's time, that I don't drive Stacey and Ekaterina mad for the 17 hours ahead of us. And I'm looking forward to hearing and speaking to many of you in the coming months about our travels and journey. But please, if you want to know more, do go to our website. Do give any of us a call. We love questions, however difficult they are, about our work in Ukraine or in Israel or in Myanmar or in Poland, in any part of the world. I mean, the World Jewish Relief is working. Thank you for listening. Very, very grateful for your attention and interest this evening.
And apologies to anyone whose question we haven't been able to come to. We will come back to you on email. So thank you very much. And Chag Pesach Sameach to everybody. And thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.